He hadn't spoken to another soul in 3 days. Just the cold. Just the concrete. Just the wind scratching across his skin, like it wanted to peel him off the earth. Elias was 72. A Vietnam vet. Former high school history teacher. Now, a ghost in the city's background. People passed him daily. Suits, phones, coats with more value than his entire life. No one saw him. No one cared. Until that night. A black car spun out across the icy street, slammed into a barrier just feet from his makeshift camp. Smoke. Crumpled steel. A man slumped behind the wheel. Elias didn't hesitate. No badge. No gloves. No reason. He broke the window with his bare hands, pulled the man out before the flames reached the fuel line. He didn't ask for thanks. He just disappeared into the alley again. What he didn't know. The man he saved was Jonas Viral, a reclusive billionaire who thought no one in this world helped without a price. Until Elias. And this time, the reward wasn't cash. It was everything money couldn't buy. They thought he was disposable. But one act of kindness made him unforgettable. Would you risk your life for a stranger, even if you had nothing left to lose? Comment where in the world you're watching from. Like and share if you still believe in quiet heroes. Elias Boone didn't look like a hero. He looked like a man the world had left behind and forgotten how to remember. Gray beard, yellowed fingernails, jacket 3 sizes too big. His boots had holes in them, not from wear, but from surrender. They no longer fought the weather. They simply let it in. His home was the corner under the 7th Street overpass, concrete ceiling, metal railings, and a view of nothing but moving feet. Every morning, Elias woke with the sun, not because he wanted to, but because the noise wouldn't let him sleep. Trucks above, sirens below, and that constant hum of a city too loud to notice who it's running over. He had a routine. Cup from the diner's trash. Fill it with tap water from the busted hydrant. Wrap his shoulders tighter in his blanket. Sit against the wall. Watch. And he watched everything. Not out of curiosity. Out of habit. Because once, long ago, he had been the one people listened to. A teacher. History, to be exact. 30 years in the same high school, chalk-stained sleeves, and a quiet, commanding voice that could turn bored kids into listeners, even just for 5 minutes. But then came the budget cuts, the downsizing, the death of his wife, the eviction, the spiral. Now, he taught no one. He watched everything, and no one watched him. Across the city, on the 51st floor of a glass fortress, another man was watching too. Jonas Viral, tech billionaire, founder of Viral Systems, publicly reclusive, privately calculating, net worth unknown, though rumored to be north of $18 billion. He sat alone in his office, minimalist, spotless, empty except for a single screen on the wall. And on that screen, a feed. One of many surveillance cameras his company had installed across the city. For security, infrastructure, efficiency. But Jonas used them for something else. He watched people, not just for fun, for patterns. He believed everyone had a pattern. Kindness was rare. Real kindness, almost extinct. So when he started noticing Elias, day after day, week after week, refusing money if he hadn't earned it, sharing food with stray dogs, covering another homeless man with his own jacket, Jonas took note. This one's not typical, he said once aloud to no one. But he didn't reach out. He didn't believe in rewarding decency. He believed in tracking it. Until everything changed. Back on 7th Street, Elias had just finished wrapping a sandwich in napkins. He wasn't hungry, but the guy 2 blocks down hadn't eaten since Wednesday. Elias had seen him coughing blood into a shirt sleeve. That's how it worked out here. They watched out for each other, the unseen, watching the unseen. He started walking. Slow steps, bad knee. Then he heard it. The crash. Screech of tires. Shatter of metal. The sickening boom of impact. He turned toward the sound. Down the block, a black car had hit the guardrail and folded like paper. Smoke. A flicker of flame. People screamed, then froze. Someone pulled out a phone, of course. But no one moved. Elias dropped the sandwich. And ran. His legs didn't work like they used to. His breath caught by the second stride. But he kept going. He reached the car just as the flames began licking at the undercarriage. The door was jammed. The window cracked but intact. Inside, a man unconscious, head bleeding. No time. Elias didn't think. He grabbed a brick from the curb and smashed the window. Glass cut his hands, but he didn't stop. He pulled the man out, dead weight and all. One arm, then both. He dragged him 10 feet before the engine caught fire. Then he collapsed beside him. No applause. No sirens, not yet. Just Elias. Coughing. Bleeding. Alive. By the time paramedics arrived, Elias was gone. He didn't wait. He never waited. Back to the alley. Back to the quiet. What he didn't know, what no one knew, was that the man he just saved was Jonas Viral, the same man who had watched him silently for months. And now, lying on the hospital bed, face bandaged, oxygen tube in his nose, Jonas remembered only 2 things from the crash: the sound of the window breaking, and the face of the man who pulled him out, worn, weathered kind. Jonas had lived a life where kindness had always come after a price tag. This was different, and for the first time in decades, he felt something he didn't recognize at first. It wasn't shame. It wasn't debt. It was human. Back in the alley, Elias sat by a trash can fire, hands wrapped in cloth he tore from an old shirt. They still bled. He didn't mind. He stared at the flame. Didn't speak. Didn't expect anything. He just saved a man. And that was enough. Because if no one saw him, at least he saw what he was still capable of. Even if the world had forgotten his name. Daylight felt colder when you owed your life to a stranger. Jonas Viral sat upright in his hospital bed, staring out the window at the city he thought he knew. The one he built tech for, invested in, controlled from boardrooms and screens. But the face that haunted him now wasn't one he'd seen in Forbes. It was his ghost. The man who pulled him from the wreck. The man who disappeared before anyone could ask his name. The man with torn gloves, glass in his palms, and a look in his eye that said, "This is just what I do." Jonas hadn't cried in 18 years, not even at his father's funeral. But that night, when the doctors left and the morphine faded, he did. Not because he was in pain, because he was ashamed. Back in the alley beneath 7th Street, Elias coughed into a rag until it turned red. He pressed it into his coat pocket before anyone could see. The city was getting colder. Shelters were full. And someone new had claimed the dry spot under the bridge. "Find somewhere else, old man." The younger guy growled. "Ain't your turf anymore." Elias didn't argue. He walked. For 3 hours. Until his legs gave out behind a dumpster behind a laundromat. He curled up on cardboard, pressed his back to the brick, and tried to warm his hands with breath. They shook now, not from fear, from fever. Jonas left the hospital the next morning against medical advice. No press. No entourage. He returned to his high-rise apartment and shut everything off. Except one thing. The surveillance wall. He pulled up feed after feed, cross-checking footage near the crash site. He rewound 3 blocks of street cams. Then 4. Then 6. And finally there. 2:36 a.m. A figure running toward the crash, limping slightly. Long coat, gray hood, then dragging him out. Backlit. Shaky. But Jonas froze the frame. Zoomed. It was him. Jonas called a name. Maya. Within seconds, his AI assistant chirped on. "Run facial recognition across all city cams in this quadrant," he said. "Match profile. Priority override. Private server." She responded. Confirmed. Meanwhile, Elias woke up sweating. His shirt soaked. His chest tight. He tried to stand, but his knees buckled. He hit the ground hard. Didn't scream. Just lay there, breathing shallow, eyes unfocused, and whispered, "Not like this." 2 hours later, a man in a dark coat walked into a diner across the street. He handed the waitress a $100 bill and a photo on a phone. "You seen this man?" he asked. She squinted. "Yeah, he eats leftovers when no one's looking. Sits outside sometimes." "Where'd he go?" She shrugged. "Haven't seen him in a couple days. Might have got sick. Happens." The man nodded once. Walked out. Jonas watched from the black SUV across the street. He didn't say a word. He just stared at the image frozen on his tablet. Elias. Barely visible, but real. He whispered, "Find him." That night, Elias's fever spiked. A woman working night cleanup behind the laundromat found him barely conscious, curled under an old tarp. She called for help. They took him to County General, under John Doe status. No insurance, no ID, no visitors, but a heart rate that said he still had a chance if someone gave a damn. Jonas found out by morning. His surveillance flagged a match. He stared at the hospital footage, Elias being wheeled in frail, soaked in sweat, hands still wrapped in torn cloth. Jonas stood up. "I'm going," he said to his driver. "No appointment?" the man asked. "Don't need one," Jonas answered. "He saved my life. Now it's my turn." Across town, a storm rolled in. Rain like nails, wind like razor wire. And through that storm, Jonas walked into the hospital lobby. No guards, no press badge, just a suit and a mission. He spoke to the nurse, slipped a business card. "Room 1123. John Doe. I need to see him." The nurse raised an eyebrow. "Only family." Jonas leaned in. "Check the ER footage from last week. He dragged me out of a burning car." Pause. The nurse didn't argue. She picked up the phone. 2 minutes later, Jonas stood at the doorway of room 1123. The room smelled of antiseptic and rust. Elias lay unconscious, tubes in his nose, 4 in his arm, machines blinking slow. But his face was calm, like a man who finally stopped running. Jonas stepped inside, pulled a chair to the bedside, sat down, and for the first time in his life, said words he'd never rehearsed. "Thank you." He stayed for hours. Didn't call anyone. Didn't answer messages. Just watched the man who saved his life breathe through machines. A man who had no reason to help him. No name to drop. No phone to record it. Just kindness. Unbought. Unseen. And Jonas made a promise, quietly, without show. "When you wake up, you're not going back to the street. You're not disappearing again. I'm not going to pay you back. I'm going to pull you forward." The beep of the heart monitor was steady. So was the rain. Elias blinked awake under fluorescent light. Throat raw, lungs sore. He wasn't dead, which disappointed him, slightly. The ceiling was white. The bed was warm. The floor burned a little. Hospital, but not County General's ER. Too clean. Too quiet. He tried to sit up. That's when he saw the chair in the corner. A man in a tailored coat, sitting still, watching. Not like a doctor. Like a man who knew what it felt like to owe something. Jonas stood. "You're awake." Elias squinted. "Do I know you?" Jonas nodded once. "You saved me." Pause. Elias coughed. "You the guy from the car?" "Yeah," Jonas said. Silence. Then Elias muttered. "Thought you'd be dead." "I almost was." Another long beat. Jonas stepped forward, voice low. "You saved me. You didn't have to. But you did." Elias looked away. "I didn't do it for thanks." Jonas nodded. "I know. That why you're here?" "No." Elias's eyes sharpened. "Then why?" Jonas sat down. "To offer you something." Elias bristled. "Don't want your money." "I wasn't going to offer money." More silence. Jonas leaned in slightly. "I want to offer you a way out. Out of this. Out of the street. Not charity. Not pity. Just a second chapter." Elias laughed once, hoarse and dry. "You think this is a book?" "No," Jonas said. "But I think we stopped reading too early." Later that day, Jonas's office buzzed. PR team, board members, legal counsel, all asking the same thing. "You're doing what with a homeless man? You want to put him where? This is a PR nightmare waiting to happen. What if he has a record? What if this looks like a stunt?" Jonas didn't flinch. He answered calmly. "It's not a stunt. It's a return." Meanwhile, Elias stared at the window. He'd been moved to a recovery suite, private, warm, paid in full. Fresh clothes sat folded on a chair. There was a phone. A meal tray. Everything smelled too clean. Too distant. He didn't trust it. That evening, a woman named June entered. Late 40s. Soft voice. Social worker energy. She carried a folder. Mr. Boone, I'm here to talk about housing options, medical care, ID recovery. Elias cut her off. No. She blinked. No to what? All of it. June didn't argue. She just sat. Waited. Elias sighed. I know how this works, he said. You clean me up, put me in some box, then forget me. June nodded. Some do, but some don't. He narrowed his eyes. You work for the rich man? No, she said. I work for the man you saved. Back in Jonas's office, his executive assistant, Ryder, confronted him. You've already donated to shelters, boss. Why this one man? Jonas looked out the window. I've donated to systems. He turned. But Elias is not a system. He's a person. And if I can't help one person without being doubted, then what the hell is all this power for? Elias, in the hospital bed, finally spoke again. Why me? He asked June. June smiled. Because you didn't ask for anything. He stared. You saved a billionaire's life and walked away. You didn't want attention. Didn't film it. Didn't wait for reward. So now you're being offered something better than reward. Which is a real choice. But choices are complicated when pride has kept you alive longer than food. The next morning, Elias tried to leave. Got out of bed. Stole back his rags. Tried to sign himself out AMA. The nurse blocked him gently. There's someone waiting outside for you. Elias scoffed. Then saw Jonas, in a hoodie and jeans. No driver. No cameras. Just him, and a small black envelope in his hand. He handed it over. Elias opened it. Inside a key. And an address. What is this? Elias asked. Jonas shrugged. Not a home. Just a door. You get to decide what's behind it. That night, Elias took the bus. Didn't call anyone. Didn't promise anything. The address was in a quiet part of town. Not fancy, but safe. He found the door. Apartment 3A. He stood there for a long time. Then slid the key in. Inside simple. Bed. Lamp. Kitchenette. A note on the table. No conditions. No questions. You've seen the worst in people. I'd like to remind you of the best. JV. Elias sat on the bed. Didn't cry. But for the first time in years, he exhaled. The key sat on the table for 3 days. Untouched. Elias had opened the door, looked inside, but hadn't unpacked his soul. He slept on top of the bed, boots still on. Ate sparingly. Kept his coat folded in the corner like armor he couldn't yet abandon. Because it didn't feel real. Because comfort felt like betrayal. To all the years he'd learned to survive without it. Outside, the world noticed. Someone had leaked a photo. Jonas Viral leaving a hospital. Jonas Viral visiting a homeless shelter. Jonas Viral seen speaking to a man in rags. It wasn't the tabloids that bit first. It was the boardroom. You've made your point, said one member over speakerphone. Now step away before this turns into a circus. Jonas replied evenly. It already is a circus. I'm just not the clown anymore. Another voice cut in. You're associating our brand with instability. Homelessness, mental illness. Jonas interrupted. You're confusing instability with humanity. Meanwhile, Elias stood outside a community center across town. He had the envelope Jonas gave him, still folded in his pocket. Inside it, not just a lease agreement, but a name. June had snuck it in. A referral for part-time library work. No obligations. No handouts. Just possibility. Elias stared at the building. Walked halfway to the door. Then turned away. Back at 3A, the apartment felt colder. He missed the streets. Not the danger, the clarity. In the streets, you knew who you were, invisible, unimportant. But here, you had mirrors, reflection, time. And time brought regret. Jonas, back in his tower, stared at the surveillance wall. But this time, he didn't look at crime stats. He watched Elias, via the hallway cam in the apartment building, legally installed per the lease. He watched the man pace. Sit. Write something. Burn the paper. Then sit again. Jonas didn't feel pride. He felt fear. That maybe Elias was going to disappear again. Not physically, but spiritually. The next morning, news broke. A major financial blog posted the headline, "Is Viral Crumbling? CEO's Mental Decline Questioned After Homeless Hero Stunt." They used Elias's face. Blurred but recognizable. Slander filled the comment sections. How long before this bum robs him blind? Is this some new charity tax shelter? I liked Jonas better when he was a ghost. Jonas's lawyer called him. Withdraw the offer. Let the man go. You did enough. Jonas said nothing, then hung up. He didn't need their permission to care, but he feared maybe Elias did. That night, Elias walked. No coat, just sweater sleeves pulled high. He walked to the place it all began, under the 7th Street Bridge. It was empty now. Someone else lived there. But he sat across the street, watched, remembered. He remembered the sound of Jonas's windshield cracking, the weight of a dying man on his shoulder, the sting of glass in his hands. He remembered why he ran toward the car that night. Not for glory, not for redemption, but because he still believed life meant something, even his. He stood, walked again, and found himself back at the community center. This time, he didn't stop at the door. He walked in, asked for the name on the envelope. A woman came out, smiled. "Elias Boone," she said, reading the referral. "You taught high school history, didn't you?" Elias blinked. Yes, I did." She nodded. "Then we have a spot in the after-school literacy program. Volunteer to start. Pay if it sticks. We just need someone who knows how to show up." Elias swallowed hard, then said the words that turned the tide. "I'm ready to show up." That night, Jonas got a knock on his office door. A guard handed him a note. Handwritten. I went. I walked in. Still shaky. Still scared. But I remembered who I was before I was nothing. Maybe the world doesn't need saving. But maybe I do. Thank you for the door. I'm learning how to walk through it now. EB. Jonas folded the letter, closed his laptop, and for the first time since the crash, felt something close to peace. Not because he fixed something, but because he didn't walk away when it would have been easier. The room smelled like pencil shavings and warm paper. Elias stood in front of 6 students, ages 9 to 14, most of them too tired, too distracted, too guarded. He understood. He'd taught tougher rooms. He held up a book. To Kill a Mockingbird. Who here's heard of this? Silence. Then a girl in the back raised a hand halfway. It's about a trial, right? Elias nodded. It's about courage. The boy next to her scoffed. Books don't fix real life. Elias smiled. You're right. Books don't fix life. But they teach us where we cracked. Silence again. Then something shifted. A stillness. A leaning forward. A listening. It had begun. Meanwhile, in the tallest building downtown, Jonas Viral sat in front of cameras. A live-streamed shareholder address, hastily scheduled, heavily anticipated. His PR team begged for prepared remarks. He didn't bring a script. He wore no suit. Just a charcoal sweater, dark jeans. He looked tired, but clear. When the cameras rolled, he leaned into the mic. I was saved by a man who had nothing. He didn't ask for my name. He didn't wait for a reward. He disappeared before the smoke cleared. That man, Elias Boone, is a former teacher, a veteran, and for the past decade, he's lived on the margins of a city that claims to be modern, advanced, and just. You call this a PR stunt. You call this weakness. You say I'm breaking the brand. You're right. I'm breaking the version of our brand that never cared who got left behind, as long as the stock held strong. He paused, let the silence settle, then added, if this costs me your favor, I accept, but if it costs us our soul, I refuse. The stream cut, but the world didn't. Clips went viral. Hashtag stand like Jonas. Hashtag Elias Boone. Hashtag from fire to front row. Some mocked him. Some called him naive. But many stopped scrolling and stared. At the community center, Elias was helping a boy named Malcolm spell perseverance. Malcolm kept switching the E and A. You'll get it, Elias said softly. You've gotten harder things right. The boy looked up. You were on TV, he whispered. Elias froze. Malcolm pulled out a phone, showed him the clip. The press had gotten hold of an old yearbook photo. Elias, age 35, in a tie, smiling. "I didn't want to be," Elias said. Malcolm shrugged. "You didn't look scared." Elias blinked and said the one thing that was more true now than ever. "I was." That night, Jonas knocked on Elias's apartment door. No cameras, no suit, just a six-pack of root beer and 2 paper bags of Chinese food. Elias opened the door. "Figured you might be tired of soup," Jonas said. Elias smirked. "Let him in." They sat, ate in silence for a few minutes. Then Elias said, "You didn't have to say all that." Jonas nodded. "I didn't." "So why did you?" Jonas paused, looked him straight in the eyes. "Because I don't want the world to just remember me for what I built. I want them to remember that I was once saved by a man who had every reason to walk away, and didn't." Elias exhaled, quiet, grateful. In the weeks that followed, the narrative changed. Viral Systems launched a new foundation, the 7th Street Project, designed to fund literacy, housing transition, and second-chance employment, modeled after Elias's own path. Elias refused to be the face, but he agreed to sit in one meeting per month. Not to advise, just to remind that the ones you overlook, they remember everything. One morning, Elias arrived early to the center. He found Malcolm sitting alone, a book in his lap. "To Kill a Mockingbird, page 243, Malcolm said. "What's on it?" Elias asked. Malcolm smiled. "The line you told us to remember." Elias sat down. Malcolm read it aloud. "You never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view, until you climb into his skin and walk around in it." Elias didn't respond right away. He just looked out the window and whispered, "That's what saved him. That's what saved me." The headlines faded. The hashtags stopped trending. The media, like always, moved on, chasing fresher outrage, shinier distractions. But real life? It stayed. And that's where the true work began. Jonas kept his company. Barely. The board voted. The investors barked. But none could argue against numbers, and ironically, his most human act brought the highest quarter gain in 2 years. Not from pity, from belief. Turns out, people still wanted to invest in someone who could look the truth in the eye and not blink. Still, Jonas paid a price. He stepped back from the CEO role. No forced resignation, his decision. He called it a recalibration. But it wasn't retreat. It was realignment. For the first time in 2 decades, he woke up without 6 meetings waiting. He didn't know what to do the first week. So he visited the 7th Street Project office. They offered him a title. He declined. "I'm not here to lead," he said. "I'm here to learn how to be useful without controlling the room." Meanwhile, Elias settled into the kind of routine that doesn't go viral. He woke up at 6:30, made tea, read the news, paper, not screen, walked 12 blocks to the center, volunteered until lunch, then went to the library and shelved books. Every Tuesday, he helped Malcolm and 3 other kids with reading fluency. Every Friday, he taught 2 ESL classes for parents. They called him Mr. B now, short for Boone, short for backbone, short for the man who sits with you until the words make sense. His apartment remained modest. 1 chair, 1 bed, 1 small bookshelf, but it was his. And for the first time in years, he locked the door from the inside, not the outside. One morning, June came by, carrying a box. Inside, papers. "Your case file," she said. Elias blinked. "What case?" "From when you were listed as missing person after your wife passed. Someone filed, but it never went anywhere. Now it's closed. You're found." He didn't open the folder. He just nodded. "I always was," he said. "They just stopped looking." Elsewhere, Jonas met with a new intern at the foundation, young, full of ideas, already quoting TED Talks. She asked him bluntly, "Why that man? Why Elias?" Jonas paused, then replied, "Because I spent years believing only those who climb deserve to stay. And then one night, the man at the bottom reached up and saved me. Not because I was rich, not because he knew who I was. but because he still believed people were worth pulling from a fire. The intern wrote it down like scripture. The city began to shift, not in headlines, but in hiring policies. A new ordinance passed, requiring background-neutral job interviews for transitional housing applicants. The bill didn't have Jonas's name on it, but he paid for the research behind it. And Elias, he wrote the testimony. 1 page, typed on a public library computer. Read out loud by a 13-year-old girl who once couldn't spell her own name, now reading with confidence that made senators lean forward. On Elias's birthday, Malcolm brought him a cupcake. Store-bought. Frosting tilted. I didn't know what flavor you like, the boy said. Elias smiled. I like that you asked. They sat on the curb outside the center and shared it in silence. The frosting melted in the sun. It was the best thing Elias had tasted in years. One evening, Elias walked past 7th Street. The bridge looked the same. Same cracks. Same shadows. But it was empty now. No sleeping bags. No shopping carts. No screams. Just quiet. He stood there for a long time, then reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a folded napkin. Inside, a small shard of the windshield from the night of the crash. He kept it all this time. Not as a trophy. As a reminder. That one act doesn't erase a life, but it can change its direction. Back in Jonas's loft, the walls were bare. He had sold most of the art. Kept only one piece, a photo. Elias, sitting in a classroom, leaning over Malcolm's workbook, pointing to a word. The caption under it, printed in small silver text. This is what rescue looks like when no one's watching. It was just another Tuesday at the community center. The kind that smelled like floor polish and crayons. The kind where laughter echoed louder than any intercom. Elias was in room 4B, helping a student named Layla finish a short essay about family. Does it have to be about blood family? She asked. Elias shook his head. Family is who shows up. She smiled. Then I got more than I thought. Down the hall, June was whispering urgently to the program coordinator. He doesn't know. Don't let anyone spoil it. The coordinator nodded, eyes twinkling. That afternoon, Elias packed his things as usual. Same notebook. Same blue pen. He had plans to stop by the library before heading home. But as he stepped into the hallway, he noticed something strange. The lights in the rec room were off. The door cracked open. Then a voice. Mr. B, you got a sec. He turned. Layla, Malcolm, 3 other students, all smiling. Come on, they said. Just for a minute. He stepped into the room. The lights flicked on, and what he saw made him stop cold. Balloons. A folding table covered in books, each one labeled with his name inside. Posters of quotes he'd said, hand-drawn by the kids. And at the center, a handmade sign. Thank you, Mr. B, for giving us back our words. For a second, he didn't move. Then the applause started. Not loud, not forced, but real. From students, from their parents, from June, from volunteers, from Jonas, standing in the back, arms crossed, eyes soft. Malcolm stepped forward with a small box. Inside, a bronze plaque, presented to Mr. Elias Boone, for teaching us that being seen is the first step to being heard. Elias looked down at it, ran his fingers across the engraving, then looked up, and said quietly, I didn't save you. You saved me. He didn't give a long speech, just sat in the circle of chairs, let the kids pile books on his lap, let the laughter happen around him, let it all in, because for the first time in a long time, he felt full. After the small ceremony, Jonas approached him. Wasn't my idea, he said. Elias nodded. That's what made it good. Jonas held out an envelope. Elias frowned. What's this? Jonas, open it when you're home. That night, Elias sat at his tiny kitchen table. He opened the envelope. Inside, one sheet of paper. At the top, the Viral Foundation logo. But the rest? Not corporate. Handwritten. Mr. Boone. Every great system, even the broken ones, needs a quiet mechanic. Someone who keeps the gears turning when no one's looking. You've been that and more. Enclosed is something small, not payment but positioning. So the next time someone says, what makes you qualified to teach? You can say this. With respect, Jonas Viral ***. Attached to the letter was a certificate. Community Educator in Residence, 7th Street Literacy Initiative. Full benefits. Optional stipend. Lifetime recognition. Elias didn't cry, but he folded the paper slowly, carefully, then stood up, walked to the mirror, looked at himself, not at the wrinkles, not at the graying beard, but at his eyes. Still sharp, still steady, still here. He whispered, I didn't disappear. I just waited to be seen again. The next day, he walked into the classroom and taped the certificate to the back wall. Not front and center, just high enough for the students to see if they looked up, which they would eventually. And when they asked what it meant, he'd say, it means I'm still learning too. The storm hit on a Thursday. Not a storm of rain, a storm of silence. Malcolm hadn't spoken all day. He'd come into the center late, hoodie pulled tight, no backpack, no usual grin. Elias noticed instantly. He didn't ask questions, not yet. He waited until the others left, until the chairs were stacked and the lights dimmed. Then he sat across from Malcolm at the back table. You want to tell me, or you want me to just sit here with you? Elias asked. Malcolm's jaw clenched. Then his voice broke through, low and cracked. They kicked my mom out of housing. Elias stayed quiet. She was behind. She tried, but they said the voucher ran out. We stayed in the car last night. He didn't cry, which meant he was drowning. Elias reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded card. He slid it across the table. Malcolm looked at it. Room 4C, 7th Street Housing Transition, Referral Boon. Malcolm blinked. You know someone. Elias nodded. I don't know a system, but I know a person who listens. The next morning, Elias walked with Malcolm to the building himself. He didn't pass him off. He sat with him through the intake, waited during the paperwork, talked to the counselor, made sure the bed was real, not promised. When it was done, Malcolm looked at him and said, You didn't have to stay. Elias smiled. No one stayed for me. I remember what that feels like. That weekend, Jonas stopped by the center. No cameras, no press, just checking in. He found Elias in the storage closet, sorting donated books. Jonas asked, You ever go take a day off? Elias smirked. I did. Once. In '92. Didn't like it. Jonas leaned against the doorframe. You know that boy you helped, Malcolm? Elias nodded. His application for the Foundation Youth Mentorship Program just got fast-tracked. Pause. He listed you as his guardian contact. Elias's hand stilled. Then he exhaled. Weeks passed. Seasons shifted. One morning, Elias walked into the library, same as always. But something was different. Malcolm was already there, sitting in his usual seat. A lesson plan in front of him. Kids around the table. Reading. Elias smiled. Took a seat in the back. Didn't interrupt. Just watched. Later that day, Malcolm walked over, flushed with pride. I didn't mess it up. Elias nodded. You made them listen. Malcolm looked away for a second, then handed him a folded paper. A college application essay draft. Title, The Man Who Sat With Me. That evening, Elias walked past the old bridge under 7th Street again. Still empty. Still cracked. But now, someone had painted a small line of words along the concrete. One act. One life. Everything changes. He didn't know who wrote it. Didn't need to. Because the world had finally started echoing what he had always known. You don't need a spotlight to leave a mark. You just need to stay when no one else does. Back at the center, a new intern asked Elias, Are you a teacher or a counselor? He chuckled. Neither. Then what do I call you? Elias thought for a moment, then answered, Call me someone who didn't give up. Change didn't come with fireworks. It came with paperwork, with signatures, with phone calls, with yes, we'll consider this, and no, we don't do that, but maybe we could. But slowly, quietly, the world shifted. Round pushpin in the city council chambers, a new motion was passed. The Boone Resolution, a citywide initiative to create paid community mentor roles for formerly homeless individuals with teaching or coaching backgrounds. It passed with 6 out of 7 votes. The lone dissenter said, "It sets a dangerous precedent." The others replied, "Good. We need one." Round pushpin at the 7th Street Literacy Center. Enrollment tripled. Not because of ads. Because kids told kids, "Come meet Mr. B. Come hear him read aloud. Come see someone who gets it." One reporter asked Elias if he felt proud. He shrugged. "I just showed up. They did the rest." Round pushpin in coffee shops and corner stores, people began saying his name. Not loudly, but with weight. "You hear about Mr. Boone?" "Yeah. My nephew's in his reading group. He's the guy who saved that billionaire, right?" "No. He's the guy who didn't stop saving people afterward." Jonas, meanwhile, kept a low profile. He declined interviews, turned down awards, but his actions whispered louder than any speech. He sold his downtown penthouse and moved into a modest home near the Literacy Center. He redirected 15% of his foundation's discretionary budget toward street-level partnerships, initiatives without metrics, but full of human return. And he started walking, not driving, to most of his meetings. Someone asked why. He said, "Because you see more faces when you're on the ground, and I never want to forget who's down there." At a community leadership panel, Malcolm, now 16, taller and more sure, took the stage. He wore a button-down shirt and sneakers covered in marker scribbles from his students. He wasn't nervous, because he had once stood in front of Elias Boone and spelled out the word hope with shaking hands, and that had been harder than this. He told the room, "I used to think I was invisible. Then a man who slept under bridges taught me how to read my own name without flinching. And then he stayed. That's the part that changed me. He stayed." The room didn't clap right away. They just sat in silence, letting it sink. Then someone stood. Then another. Then the whole room. Back in Elias's apartment, he taped Malcolm's speech to the wall, right next to a photo of the first class he ever taught, back in '81. 2 images, 40 years apart. One taken in a public school, one born from a public sidewalk. Same heart in both. The Foundation newsletter released a yearly report. It ended with one paragraph. "We measure impact in books read, hours volunteered, and lives touched. But sometimes, the greatest change isn't what we count. It's who we no longer ignore." Jonas stopped by the community center on a rainy Thursday. He found Elias in the hallway, kneeling to tie a kid's shoe. The kid ran off. Elias stood up, back-cracking. "You here for something?" Elias asked. Jonas held up a bag of sandwiches. "Figured you forgot to eat again." Elias took one, unwrapped it. "This all you billionaires do now?" Jonas smiled. "Only the ones who learn something." That weekend, someone spray-painted a wall near 7th Street. Not graffiti. A portrait. Elias, holding a book, with a flame behind him, not burning, but lighting the way. Underneath, 3 words. He stayed anyway. No one claimed it. No one took it down. It just stayed. Like him. The snow fell soft and steady. December wrapped the city in quiet. Lights blinked in apartment windows. Car horns sounded further away, like the world was whispering for once. In room 4B of the 7th Street Literacy Center, the chairs were stacked. The bulletin board still read, "Read to Rise." The heater ticked with age. Elias Boone sat alone at the desk, a book in front of him, blanket over his lap, steam rising from a mug of tea someone had left earlier. He wasn't teaching tonight. The center had officially closed for winter break, but he came anyway, because something about this room felt like breath, like belonging. Footsteps approached. He looked up. Malcolm entered, older now, taller, his hair braided tight. He didn't speak at first, just dropped a wrapped gift on the desk. Elias raised an eyebrow. "What's this?" "Open it." Elias unwrapped it carefully, folded each flap like it mattered. Inside, a book. Hardcover. Glossy. The title, "The Man Who Stayed. Stories from 7th Street." He opened it. Page after page. Essays, poems, letters, drawings. All from the kids, the parents, the volunteers, even Jonas. Handwritten or typed. Some with spelling errors. Some with perfect grammar. All of it real. At the end, one final blank page. A sticky note on top. This one's for you. Elias stared at the page. He didn't write anything yet. Instead, he looked at Malcolm. Where'd you get the idea? Malcolm shrugged. You gave us words. Figured it was time we gave some back. Elias tried to speak. Couldn't. Malcolm sat beside him. They said nothing for a while. Then Malcolm asked, You ever think about the fire? Elias blinked. Which one? The crash. That night. Before all this. Elias nodded slowly. Yeah, every day. Me too, Malcolm said. Not cause of the car, but cause that's the night the world started over for you. Elias looked down. No, he said quietly. That's the night I remembered I was still part of it. Later, after Malcolm left, Elias walked home alone. No rush. The streets were dusted white. His boots made soft prints behind him. He passed a mural, his face on brick, flame behind. Someone had added something new beneath it in chalk. We don't need heroes. We need people who don't leave. He stared at it for a long time, then reached into his coat pocket, pulled out the shard of windshield, the same one he'd kept since the crash. He placed it gently on the sidewalk beneath the wall, then walked away. Back at his apartment, he poured himself a glass of water, sat in his one chair, opened the book Malcolm gave him, turned to the final blank page, and slowly, in careful handwriting, wrote, I was once no one. Then someone believed I still mattered. So I stayed long enough to make sure others knew they did too. If you're reading this, and you feel forgotten, stay anyway. You're more seen than you think. He closed the book, placed it on the shelf beside two others, To Kill a Mockingbird, and the first copy of the Boone Resolution. Outside, the snow kept falling. Inside, Elias finally turned off the light, not to hide, but to rest. Sometimes the ones who save us don't raise their voices. They just stay.